Welcome back to Your Story Medicine. Today I am with Kristen Gonzalez. Kristen is a licensed acupuncturist, herbalist, yang sheng enthusiast, and founder of the Way of Yin, a lifestyle education company dedicated entirely to bridging the wellness gap in reproductive health by leaning in on timeless wisdoms. Welcome, Kristen.
Hey, June. Thank you for having me.
Hi. So, really excited to dig in because Kristen and I actually met in a yurt in San Pedro, California, when I was a yoni steaming apprentice, and and you came in as the one who put together all the herbal blends. And how many years ago was that? Like four
Oh my
years
goodness.
now?
No, it's so much more
Longer? 5?
longer. I think longer.
Oh my gosh. All I know is that me being in that yurt in the backyard in San Pedro
Amazing.
was was honestly the gateway for me into ancestral healing and reclaiming my ancestors' medicine. So thank you
Mhm.
for being a catalyst to that. And I've also continued to be a student of yours. And now we get to play together as we are letting the world know that this medicine is also accessible to
Yeah.
them.
Yes.
So let's open up with celebrations. What is it that you
Okay.
get to celebrate about yourself today?
Oh, today I get to celebrate that I actually feel healthy and abundant, and that I'm here with a close friend. And I know that you say like I'm the teacher, but I feel like you're the teacher. I feel like the symbiosis between teacher and student is so yin and yang with us. So I appreciate you. I celebrate you. I celebrate this conversation.
Girl, practice receiving. I'm just kidding. This is one of the most challenging things. So
Yeah.
this is the first time where I'm actually starting to ask my guests what it is they get to celebrate about themselves, because I feel like for those of us who are walking this path without much guidance, especially on how to turn our medicine into a sacred business, we don't really celebrate ourselves.
Mm. Yeah. It's hard. It's hard, I think, to break those patterns when there's so much in our past that's working against us with that, with actually receiving and being open to receiving. It's vulnerable. It's a vulnerable space. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we have all of these layers of protection.
Well, I'm going to hold you accountable in
Okay. We can do
reminding
it for
you
each other.
of how much of a badass you are. Okay. So, in your own words, how would you describe your medicine?
Mm. The first thing that just comes up for me is just my body, because it's been a journey for me to almost re-inhabit my body. I feel like I'm when they say body, mind, spirit, I'm very much in my mind. I've always felt a spiritual connection, but my body has always been the thing that reminds me and brings me back, in almost this like reality, a human experience. So it reminds me to rest and to rejuvenate and to really just soak in pleasure. Yeah.
I feel like there's so many people who don't even know what pleasure is. I had to realize for myself before I started walking this path, I didn't know what that was either. I
Mhm.
just equated it to like sexuality without realizing that pleasure can be found in the simplest acts,
The most
like
simplest.
sipping a warm cup of tea, or looking at yourself in the mirror and being like, damn girl, you fine today.
Yeah, looking at the reflection in your eyes, the twinkle. Yeah, the simple pleasures, and I love the word like simple with pleasures together, because it really emphasizes that it doesn't have to be this like grand thing. Yeah, putting your feet on dirt or grass, rubbing, your fingers through your kid's hair. I mean, it could be just whatever brings you in the present moment, in that moment of just simple gratitude. Yeah, pleasure.
So your business is called The Way of Yin. And before pressing record, I had to practice pronouncing this correctly. Yang Shang enthusiast. So tell us about the inspiration behind the name and also how your ancestors have walked with you on this journey into reclaiming this medicine as your own.
Yeah. So, Yang Sheng, it translates to nourishing life. And it's a kind of a lifestyle, a healthy lifestyle kind of way of being. And it really recognizes your deep connection to nature, because it recognizes you as nature. Um, and so I think I gravitate towards this traditional health practice and cultivation, because a lot of us are lost because we are kind of broken from our lineage, and we're always searching. We're searching outwards. And this is a way to really just kind of sink in. So I think that's why I'm an enthusiast. um, so the Way of Yin is just like almost like this play on words. It's like an antidote to a very young, obsessed world. We are just so influenced by all this outward pressure to perform and to produce and just to always be active. And there's not this kind of equal reverence for rest and rejuvenation and recovery. And so what we end up doing is just kind of burning the candle at both ends and not really enjoying simple moments along the whole journey, and also thinking about longevity. Yeah. So I think you asked about ancestral lineage, right?
Yeah, tell
Yeah.
us about your ancestors and how it is that they've inspired your path.
Yeah. So I feel like I embody yin and yang. My dad is Norwegian Irish, and my mom is from South Korea. And so I'm definitely like a blend of the two, like a push and pull, a yin and yang. And I think for a long time, ooh, I'm getting emotional.
Yeah, it's okay.
It feels kind of shaky talking about it. Um, but if I were to just sink into the feeling right now, it always felt tense to kind of have, to almost hold together these two aspects of myself that were so different. And I think there were aspects that I really resisted and denied, and it changed in varying amounts throughout my whole life, but I feel like I'm at a place now where I honor the kind of mishmash of the two. And yeah, and so I feel like what I do now in the world is like this embodiment of my ancestral lineage. It's like that bridge, that tenseness between like two extremes, and how can we actually live in like this harmony and realize that we actually need both, the push and the pull. Yeah.
We have spoken before on my last online summit, and I just feel like there's so much expansion and shifts that have taken place since then. And it's so beautiful to be able to reconnect beyond the summit, even just our time together in the yurt when honestly I didn't know anybody who was doing this work at the time. I feel like we are pioneering what it looks like to bring this medicine back to the people. And for you, you have chosen a very specific niche, because I feel like my experience ever since I started learning about reproductive justice and ancestral healing, so much is emphasized on the womb.
Mm.
You see it everywhere, womb healing and what else? So, anyways, you have a very lovely niche that is not as embraced, not as talked about. So I was actually a student of Kristen's in her course all about the Jade Gate. So tell us about what the Jade Gate is and why is it you felt called to bring attention to this?
Mm. So the Jade Gate is the vagina vulva. And
How dare you?
and for those of it that you don't know, what the Jade Gate is. Now you know. What called me to the work? It's the return. It's recognizing and honoring the return in which we all came. And it's taboo when it shouldn't be taboo. There's so much misinformation, misunderstanding, shame when it comes to the Jade Gate. And when we talk about mind-body connection, there needs to be an integration. And if we have so much resistance or shame about an area and we don't understand it and it's just kind of off the radar, how can we fully heal all aspects of the self if we don't fully integrate all aspects of ourselves? And because it's a gateway, it's a gate, it's a portal, it's where we all came from and always kind of seek to return to. It heals not only the present, it heals the past and it heals the future. So that's the way that I see it. Yeah, all the concentric circles.
So, what is your life was not always this way, I'm sure. And I'm curious about what is it that led you to acupuncture versus choosing a more traditional route as a healer?
Yeah. And so this goes back to the whole yin and yang aspect of myself. I always grew up with this very linear, black and white understanding of the world. And I'm really good at it. I'm really good at all the like, technical things. But I think what the part of me that has been striving to become recognized is my artistic self and the mystical, spiritual self. And so when seeking, I guess, like a profession, I needed something that kind of weaved the two, the practical and the spiritual. And so I think one thing that's actually missing in most health professions is the recognizing that stories and using myth touches an aspect of our healing that like the linear stuff just can't do. So I think I needed a medicine that was philosophical in nature and talked about all the edges of possibility. And I think that's what my practice does. It provides that.
I also hear your babies in the back.
Always and forever.
They bring so much joy, and I just love seeing, even hearing the journey you've been on with being in a household of all like boys,
Young.
basically. Young energy.
Pure yang. Yeah. And children in general are an abundance of yang. So that's why they spark so much vitality. And that's why it's so important to have intergenerational homes, with young, middle age, and old, because we all benefit each other in nourishing life.
So tell us about what is it that you have been creating lately? I know that now you're bringing in Jing Essence, and there's a lot of folks who are now seeking you out for beyond just Jade Gate Health. So what is
Yeah.
that?
What am I working on?
What is Jing Essence?
Oh, Jing Essence. So Jing Essence, I always say, let's live a Jing centered life. So Jing is this like concentrated, the most concentrated aspect of yourself. And you can equate it to like DNA, but essentially it's like that determinant that it's like the trajectory of your life and the quality of your life. And so there's two aspects to it. There's a pre-heaven essence and a post-heaven essence. So pre-heaven essence, that's like your lineage, your ancestry, like what your parents pass on to you essentially. And post-heaven essence is like from the moment that you're born, everything you're exposed to, lifestyle, environment, workload, stress, diet, nutrition. And so these two aspects weave together to determine your development throughout your life. And so and Jing is like, I guess like a physical manifestation would be like menstrual blood for those of us that menstruate, and sperm. Sperm is also like a physical form of essence. And so if you understand that this is like almost like your savings account, it's like you cultivate it, you harness it, you protect it. And this actually determines your vitality throughout your whole life. You'll do anything to protect it, right? And you almost consider it in your actions in your life. So for those of us that menstruate, we have what's called like 3 golden opportunities to really enhance our vitality, or almost like wreak havoc on our constitution. So these 3 golden opportunities kind of mark Jing loss, natural kind of Jing loss. So menstruation is one, postpartum is like our greatest kind of Jing loss, and then also perimenopause. So if you approach your life within this context, your health within the context, and know that Jing loss happens every month at menstruation, you'll look at your blood as a vital sign. You'll start to look at it a bit closer and harness like this close relationship with it. And then you'll do everything possible to take care of mothers postpartum to ensure full recovery. And then also perimenopause, when we transition slowly out of our menstruating years. And so this kind of Jing loss that happens naturally, there's a way to approach that and live like a Jing centered life, to where you know that this feeds into your longevity. Yeah. And I feel like we don't learn this stuff. We don't learn and approach our health in this way. And I think it's really important.
Yeah, I feel like for a lot of us, like at least I feel like for myself, whenever my moon cycle comes around, it's more of an annoyance than it is a time of retreat. I'm like, oh gosh, my body's doing it again. And so it just surprises me at how we are taught to completely dissociate from our bodies, our bodily function, if we want to be a contributing member
Of
to society.
society. Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it's especially challenging if you're somebody who has a day job where you're
Mm-hmm.
required to show up, but then there's people like me and you, and maybe more people today while we are in a pandemic and being asked to stay at home, where we have that privilege of being able to rest during this time. And I feel like it speaks so much to the imbalance that we have, this hustle and grind mentality. It's something that I'm still unlearning, but how is it that somebody could start to tend to their Jing essence
Mm.
with all of these obstacles that are around us, and the stories that society is telling us of what it means to actually show up and feel like we're contributing?
Yeah, that's such an amazing question. So, yeah, we do live in a society that does not support the cyclical body. It supports like the more linear aspects of ourself. We have both, right? We always move forward, but we're always moving forward in a cycle. And for those of us that kind of, go through that cycle a little bit more often, almost like monthly, it's difficult. It's difficult to show up in such a linear way. But I think there are subtle ways to be able to adapt to that with a little bit of planning. And when you get to know your cycle a bit more intimately, you'll kind of get a sense for when it's time to kind of prepare for your bleed. You'll feel it. And so maybe it's the time to kind of wrap up projects, and so that you can actually prepare for your bleed and actually rest. And rest doesn't mean like incapacitated. Yeah, rest just means doing less, practicing Wu Wei, the art of doing nothing, and just being and enjoying and soaking in the pleasure of release. Yeah, and so I don't want it to get misconstrued that, rest means that you just have to be laid out on your back. It just means turning inward and allocating your energy differently. Maybe talking less, maybe putting your energy more towards you versus outward. It could mean exercising differently during your bleed. It could mean, refraining from really taxing conversations. I mean, it's just really about energy conservation. It doesn't mean that, you're not functioning, yeah. So I hope that makes sense.
I'm like, well, I was kind of looking for an excuse to just lounge out on the
In your
couch
burrito blanket.
in my burrito blanket. If you're watching the video, I ordered a burrito blanket, and I legit feel like a burrito when I turn into a burrito when I wrap myself in it. Yeah, I'm curious about, like, okay, when people see you, when I look at you, I'm like, wow, Kristen, she just looks like she has everything together. She has clear skin, her hair is glowing. Kristen is the embodiment of yin energy and what it looks like to be able to take care of herself. And I'm curious if this is something that has naturally come to you,
Mm.
or if it's something that you've also had to learn or unlearn like the rest of us.
Oh my goodness. I do not have it all together all the time. And I think that's one of the things that I'm unlearning is like that perfectionism and, having this perception, that everything is going right all the time. So the answer is no. It doesn't just come naturally. It's a cultivation practice. And I would say that, there's been some really key times in my life where some major alchemization and unraveling has happened. And that's, I always share that, with all like the signs and symptoms, I have these air quotes going on for those audio listeners. The signs and symptoms, it's all kind of part of healing. Healing is a cyclical process. It's not something that like a destination we finally reach, and we can put our flag on top of this mountain. We're like, I'm healed. Because we are cyclical in nature, we're forever in this endeavor of healing not only the present, but the past and the future. I love how you frame it, that we are like future ancestors, you know? And so if you approach it that way of understanding our cyclical nature, and that we're always kind of unraveling, and sometimes there's an acceleration process with that. Usually when we're shifting life cycles, it's like when you're shifting from like puberty to becoming like, you know, a maiden, and, you know, maiden into like a mother, and so forth. Usually there's like times of accelerated kind of unraveling, and that's medicine. And I know in the time it feels like, oh, I don't know if I can handle this, or I'm falling apart, but it's kind of part of it, kind of allowing the layers to just fall off like snake skin, so that you actually come through anew. Yeah, so no, I don't have it put together all the time. I'm always still figuring it out. I'm always healing. Yeah, but it's definitely a practice and a cultivation.
So tell us about some of your practices. What is it that you have been doing to stay grounded, especially in these times? And also, what is it that you've had to learn to release?
Yeah. So the release part is simple to answer. Is that whole perfectionism, right? It's like that perception that everything is okay all the time, because everything is not okay all the time. It's okay to be human. It's okay to be angry and really sad and full of grief. And it's good to be joyous and full of abundance and gratitude. Yeah, so I would say that, as far as like needing to release that perfectionism. And that comes from all the outside pressure and internal pressure of that linear kind of moving forward, you know, hide your emotions, push through, that kind of a thing. So it's hard. It's really hard. Yeah, so the practices that really show up for me, because, you know, there's a lot of ways to do things, right? And you'll be exposed to, you know, yoga and qigong, and I mean, there's so many ways, singing bowls, and, you know, I mean, it's just so many different ways that you can create ritual in your life. But the thing that I always emphasize is resonance. It has to feel that you can actually incorporate this into your life consistently. I mean, hence the word ritual. But it has to have that resonance to where it feeds you fully. And so the thing that has shown up consistently for me is like tuning in with the seasons and really creating traditions around that. And this is something that I have unconsciously and consciously have been pursuing, unconsciously, because my body tells me. My body is like the best communicator. And I've resisted it for so long because of that pressure to perform, to produce, to move forward, to hide. But yeah, I think realizing that what's matching your nature with nature, that is a really intimate practice for me. Yeah. So I think when it comes to seasonal foods, checking out what nature's doing outside, just looking outside and seeing how I feel in my body in reflection to it. Am I aligned? Am I resisting? Am I an hour ahead or an hour behind? Am I a season ahead, a season behind? Yeah, so I think that's that's the practice that I've been really sinking into.
Just when I think I know my body, I realize that there's so much more I have yet to learn. And one of the challenges I'm overcoming is discerning when it is my body needs rest and when it actually needs movement. I had a situation last week where I told myself, you are being lazy,
Mm,
you haven't been moving much, and so go work out. And I skated to the gym. I did a hit workout, and as soon as I got home, I could not stop sneezing. I freaked out because I thought I got COVID, by the
mm,
way. And I scheduled to get tested just to be safe. That evening, I went to bed early, woke up, was completely clear, and also got tested for negative. And so I
mm.
feel like there's a lot of us, probably our listeners as well, who it's easy to say, connect with your body, listen to your body. And yet there's a lot of us who are still learning
Yeah.
about what that means. And so when do you feel it's time for somebody to receive support or mentorship so that they can also recognize the signs and know that they don't have to go about this alone?
Yeah. So just to answer that first part, so some of us are yin dominant bodies and some of us are yang dominant bodies. And so for those of us that have like this cyclical nature almost every month, like a menstrual cycle, um, it's always kind of, it's, yeah, it's like, well, how do I know when to rest? How do I know when to be active? I think, and this might just be kind of a personal preference, but it's probably on, I don't know how to phrase it. So, like the default is probably that your body needs rest in order to actually build enough energy to exert yang, to exert activity. So, if it becomes a little bit confusing, just see where you are in your menstrual cycle, and then start to kind of track. So there are really kind of physical signs that tell you that your hormones are running super, super low right now, or your hormones are like really abundant right now. And so yang loves to be used, loves to be activated. And so there are key times to where you can kind of activate that yang for your benefit. And then other times where if you activate yang without enough rest, then it's like you're running on empty, and you're burning fumes essentially. Yeah. As far as seeking a mentor, I always say, like, everybody has like a healer within. Um, and I always say that the first line is talk to your family. um, because I feel like, we do search out for mentors, right? So I wonder if we almost kind of searched inward and just really get curious about your actual lineage. What were the health practices of your ancestors? Did they use plants? Did they cook certain meals at certain times of the year? What did they do uh, to prepare for certain times of the year? I wonder if kind of healing those things and gaining clarity about where you actually came from adds a lot to that story. It fills in a lot of gaps almost. Um, if that's not available to you and there is, opportunity to kind of learn more about yourself, more about your body, more about anatomy, physiology, and um, more philosophical teachings, um, resonance. It comes back to resonance. That's super important. There's so many different ways to heal, so many different approaches, but really choose what comes at high resonance. Yeah.
Hmm. So if you could envision yourself as a future ancestor, looking back at Kristen, either present day or perhaps a time in your life when you were unsure about whether or not this was your medicine, what is it that you would say?
I think the word pressure comes up. And this kind of pressure to be something or to prove something. And so there's like these key times in my life where I just wanted to control the outcome. And but if I were to look now, maybe because I'm 41 and I have a little bit of little pearls of wisdom, is, there are certain things that you cannot control. And if you can find ways to just release that pressure of needing to know the outcome, of needing to be a part of every single aspect of the outcome, there's a little room to actually release that pressure, almost like an Instant Pot. In my mind, I'm envisioning this Instant Pot. And so just easing into almost like shifting the context of understanding, reframing that gosh, I don't even know what I'm trying to say. It's like trust and surrender almost. Yeah. And knowing, like how you say all the time, knowing that you are held. There's something beyond you. You are held by this unseen power. And you hold that and you are held. So just trust more, surrender more. I think that's my elder self coming through.
Be in your yin more.
Yes.
walk the path, the way of yin.
Perfect.
So on brand. I love it so much. By the way, so I am an alumni of one of Kristen's programs, as I mentioned earlier, and I just need to do a plug that your course about the Jade Gate, I came to you, TMI for my listeners, but hopefully if you may be listening saying like, oh my gosh, that's so me, and it's so taboo to talk about this, but I spent my whole life with chronic yeast infections, not even knowing that it was rooted in my childhood trauma. And I would go from doctor to doctor, just being given a pill or a cream to the point where I completely normalized it. And when I took your course, the medicine was mainly what was on the aisle of the Asian stores. And those ingredients, it was ingredients that I had grown up with. It's like, wow, all of this medicine was already accessible to me. And it was the first time in my life where I feel like I was truly in control of my healing. My symptoms went away when I stuck to the diet. And now, like if ever I get symptoms, which is very, very rare, now I just know that I can literally lean on the medicine of my ancestors to heal me. And so I thank you for that. There's such trash talk about white rice. And you were the one who was all like, white rice porridge is going to be your biggest ally. And I was like, oh, thank you so much. Why did I neglect myself? Why did I listen to all of those other fads? So thank you for helping me to return.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think one of the questions that actually comes through, because one part of healing the Jade Gate, because everything is connected, we have to heal the north, so whatever happens down south in the Jade Gate happened from the north. And so digestion and your microbiome play a really huge part. And the conversation of your ancestral kind of staples comes in. You know, what did your ancestors really turn to and enjoy, and was like a key part of their nutrition?
Ooh, and the other mind-blowing thing I learned from you is that the tissue in our cervix, correct me, teacher, cervix literally translates to neck.
Neck.
And so the way that your medicine has helped inform the work I do as a storytelling coach is that people have this belief that the stagnation is actually in our throat. This is why I can't
Mhm.
speak my truth. But with your guidance, now I know that the healing actually begins at the Jade Gate, in the yoni, in our womb space. And when we can tap into that part of ourselves, that is where we will find our stories and then be able to speak our truth
Yeah.
from a grounded place. So thank you.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. You're so welcome.
Yeah.
I love
So
that
tell,
reflection.
yeah. So for our audience, tell us where is it that they can go and find you, and some of the other programs that you have brewing in case others want to continue walking this path.
Awesome. Yeah. So thewayofyin.com. That's the easiest way to kind of learn more. I have a lot of blog posts, and I do offer evergreen courses. So they're self study, and you have access for life so that you can revisit the content at your own pace. So yeah, I teach on the Jade Gate, which is all about holistic vaginal well-being, but also the whole kind of menstrual continuum. So about embodied menstruation, breast health, which is super important, and then also perimenopause. So the thing that I have brewing right now, it's very much in the gestation period, but I'm collaborating with some individuals that I have high resonance with. And we are kind of dreaming up almost like a 9 or 10th or year long kind of journey into the womb continuum, and following it on almost like a seasonal context. Yeah.
What is the minimum age for somebody to start having awareness of their perimenopause?
Um, it's that's kind of hard to say. It's a hard sell in the Western world. But I would say anybody in their mid 30s can start to kind of dive deep and learn about it.
Oh my gosh, it's time.
And it's all about, it's about awareness and preparation. And if you live like a Jing centered life, you know that the change is coming, and there's lots and lots of things that you can do to help and replenish and live vitally throughout your whole life.
Well, thank you so much, Kristen, for your mentorship, your medicine, your way of embodying yin. And please, everybody, be a student. If not you, find somebody in your family to do so, because one of our beliefs is that there is not just a healer in every block, but a healer in every household and a healer within each and every single one of us. And the resources are abundant. So thank you, Kristen, for making it accessible for the rest of us.
Thank you so much.